Okay, so hi everyone. Thank you for being here today. And I'm gonna kick this very exciting event today. My name is Kinga Ince. I'm a media expert and the founder and CEO of mediaspace.global from Budapest. Let me introduce you to my colleague, Lavina Sodbentian from London. She's going to be our technical host today, and she's our head of content and communications. It's a huge pleasure to welcome two of our Leadership Club members from Kuala Lumpur, Farrell and Craig. They will run this event today as hosts because they've got this discussion series on Mediaspace.global on different very interesting topics related to communications. Today, we have one of the hottest topics these days, AI ethics, on our agenda. Let me also welcome two special guests who are AI experts from two different perspectives. So I think it's going to be a very interesting conversation today. Farrell will introduce them a little bit later. And those who are on this call live, not watching the live stream, but being part of this conversation, you will also have the opportunity to introduce yourself and join the conversation. Mediaspace, as you might know, is a global network for professionals in media, marketing, edtech, law, technology, and regulation. And we created this platform 3 years ago to provide a more interactive way to leading and ambitious professionals globally to meet people, not just profiles, and to go beyond and our current circles. Obviously, we want to break the elitist and local professional and business bubbles and create professional conversations on the hottest topics of the industry. So I think it's going to be a very, very interesting part because we've never had AI topics on our agenda so far. We are going to live stream this part, as you see, and we will cut the live stream after the panel discussion. We are recording the session, but it's available only for our premium members. We will do print screens as well to share publicly. So I need your permission to do all of that, or otherwise I will have to ask you to leave this session. But I believe that you are staying, and those who are just watching this live stream, I would like to invite you to join the call. The event link is available on Mediaspace and LinkedIn, and this is a free event for Mediaspace members. So I think that's all from me, and Farrell, over to you.
Thank you, Kinga. Hello, everyone. My name is Farrell. I'm actually the co-founder of Orkin Consulting Asia, and as well as the Third Degree. I think when we first discussed coming up with a sort of like a community of topics that we could, that would work for both Southeast Asia as well as Europe, we thought of topics where, we would have different perspectives from both sides of the pond, so to speak, on our perspectives on contemporary topics. And that's how the rationale behind Sea Change was born. So just to tell you a little bit more, a bit more about what we do, Orkin is a communications agency. We're based out of Kuala Lumpur. And, we basically do everything from branding, strategy to training, the whole works. Our clients are, across the board, from multinationals to SMEs to government-linked companies, as well as the Third Degree, which is a postgraduate. It's a platform to assist postgraduate students with their research and their development, etc. So I think that's something that Craig will expand in a couple of minutes. But just to kick things off, I would like each of the panelists to maybe introduce themselves. Tell us a little bit more about who they are, what they do, and where they come from. So maybe we'll start off with Frankie.
Hello, everyone. I'm Francesca. I'm here in London, in the UK. I am the co-founder of the Generative AI Conference. So that is an event taking place during London Tech Week, and we're focused on generative AI for the media, marketing, and creative industries. And I also have a community called Fashion AI, we're building up a tech solution to create fashion using generative AI. We've got 20,000 followers on LinkedIn and 200 people in Discord who are actively engaged in our competitions. And as soon as we build our tech platform, they hopefully will become customers of our tool.
All right. So maybe Pernille next.
Hi, I'm Pernille Tranberg. I'm in Denmark, just north of Copenhagen. I'm a former journalist, but the past 12 years I've been working with privacy and data ethics. And I do a lot of talking and teaching in data understanding, in AI and data ethics, data democracy, as I call it. And I'm a co-founder of dataethics.eu, a nonprofit who is trying to promote responsible ways of using data and AI.
All right, thank you. Craig?
Thanks. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. I'm Craig. I'm also Farrell's business partner in both Orkin and the Third Degree. But I came here tonight and I wanted to encourage this conversation tonight because I'm interested in the way in which AI is shaping ethics in terms of research, but also in terms of what it means for the broader picture of our industry, the communications industry, because I believe although we have to live with it, and although it's, you know, it's always going to be a feature in the future, we've got to find ways to do so ethically. And I think, especially in Southeast Asia, where Farrell and I are based, it's very important that we have conversations and we learn from what is happening elsewhere in the world as well, because Southeast Asia is usually a tiny bit behind the rest of the world. So we have the chance to garner information, garner experiences from others. And I hope the conversations tonight will actually lead us to that.
Thank you. So I guess we'll probably just kickstart the whole session by, we'll open it up to, a series of questions that we've drafted for our panelists. I'm going to kick things off. Obviously with AI, there are a lot of concerns, obviously, but, speaking from your perspective and your sort of expertise, your sort of industry, what are your concerns for, on the ground, sort of like, with AI happening on the ground, so to speak? So maybe with Francesca again, we'll start off with Francesca.
I think it's a fine line. I think if we're over-regulated, we'll stop a lot of innovation. But at the same time, there are some key questions with regards to IP, whether you are a creator or your brand. For example, you'll see fake brand collabs between brands at completely different ends of the spectrum. So it's really up to then the brands to decide whether they want to engage with AI creators and allow them to use their brand to create new product lines, new concepts, and reward them and encourage that behavior, or they want to protect themselves and go after Midjourney, who might be allowing people to prompt with their work. So that's from the brand standpoint. And then from creators, if they've got their works online, Behance or Pinterest, a lot of these generative AI tools have actually used that data. That's so that's a concern. And then I would say for the end user, they will opt into using these new tools because they're cool and they're trendy. They'll upload their images just to see what they look like as a Disney Pixar character, and then put that on their social media without reading the terms and conditions and realizing that their image, their likeness is out there and might be used at some point in an ad, in something more nefarious. And so we have the same issues as what we had with, I guess, Cambridge Analytica using Facebook to psychologically profile people and then send out ads. So you have to really look at who the founders are of that community or of that platform, and are they legitimate or not? So there'll be a lot of new players coming into the space, some bad actors and some who are good actors. So having a radar for that is probably the key thing in the space, and doing due diligence. Everyone has to do due diligence, whether they're in business or whether they're just a consumer.
Thank you. Thank you. What about Pernille?
Well, I would say that what worries me mostly, I mean, there are lots of good ways of using AI, and I suppose we're mainly talking about generative AI now. And my worry is that we're going to repeat what we've done with social media. We have all jumped into big platforms, data harvesting. They have made a hell of a lot of money on our data without us knowing, and our kids have been manipulated. We have been manipulated. And now we're going to the next round with generative AI. And because it's not regulated, I fear that we'll see the same. That a lot of people will upload business secrets, their personal data. It will be the big players, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Facebook, Baidu, Tencent. They will be the one controlling this. And yes, there will be a lot of small players, but they will be dependent on the infrastructure of the big players who are setting the rules, who are controlling everything. And the problem with that right now is that there's one reason why they're doing it. It's profit. It's not to make a better society or make a better life for humans. It is profits. And they launched their products, especially Microsoft, I know, which owns probably the most of AI, OpenAI, without any responsibility.
That makes sense. Craig, do you want to add on or echo the concerns?
I think I want to do both. I mean, thank you both, because you've touched on things that I wanted to talk about, but I wanted to talk about it from an academic, a university perspective as well. First of all, if I can touch on what Pernille had said with respect to confidentiality, because as we start using the different technology, information that we put in to help generate content for ourselves, for our clients, and so forth, now becomes publicly available for anybody else who's actually trying to utilize the same technology for different purposes, which brings us to, issues about when we try to use it perhaps before a product launch, for example. When we go into the academic side of things, I worry most about the accuracy, because we're finding that AI platforms are generating false citations, they're misinterpreting, they're pulling together fragments of ideas that are being structured together in beautiful concepts, but absolutely false. And as an academic, students are giving this to us and saying, well, I've learned something. And what they've learned is nothing. They've not even thought critically. So I do worry, my big concern here is for the accuracy of what we're getting, for how that's going to implicate for our students and for researchers in terms of critical thinking and triangulation and other issues associated with research. But I also think there's a different concern that nobody's quite raised here. And I feel it because I see it here in Malaysia. And I'm sure it's elsewhere. And, I can't claim that it's a Malaysian only thing. But I think it's very much a lack of understanding. And generally speaking, a lot of people, whether it be in industry, in academia, or simply just interested people out there who are looking at AI specifically, they have a lack of understanding of what it is, how it's constructed, where the information is coming from, how do I even use it, and more than anything, the implications of using it, which brings me full circle back to confidentiality. So those are the sort of concerns that I think about in relation to it. So
All right.
I actually, because Farrell and I are sharing the questions tonight, I'm going to ask our two guests a slightly different question, if I may. I want to ask whether you feel employees using AI at work, say, for example, in an agency situation, are we cheating our employers and or our clients by using AI to come up with strategic campaigns, content for, content to populate websites and so forth? Are we cheating them by using ideas that we've not been paid for, that are out there in the public domain? Or is it just quite acceptable in that context? So maybe, Pernille, if I can ask you to reflect or deject on that one for me?
Well, I think when you use AI or generative AI in any context, whether it's towards as an employee or if you're using it, in any context as media or branding campaigns or whatever, then transparency is the most important thing, that you tell everybody that this is generated by AI or it is partly generated by AI. I don't think you should generate anything 100% with AI. I think you should use it as a research tool. But even using it as a research tool, you should say something like generated by the help of AI or something. Because we need that transparency. Otherwise, we are going to be fooled more and more in the future. I think I read a prognosis from Europol actually saying that in 2026, 90% of all content online will be AI generated. And a lot of that will be true and a lot of that will be fake, probably. We have no idea. Probably more fake than true. And so in the long run, I actually think we'll say human-made because that will be in minority. So we have to say human-made and all the other stuff is AI generated.
Right.
It's interesting because in the US, for example, and I think in Europe as well, a number of universities have gone down the track of there being a declarative statement on theses and dissertations. So in terms of how much AI has been used, it's coming into policies. What we don't see in Southeast Asia yet is movement towards that. And we don't see it so much in terms of agency-client relationships, because talking to friends of ours who are in the industry, nobody's actually told their clients we're using AI to do this work. So that's perhaps an area that we really do have to move forward. Frankie, do you want to contribute anything to that question at all?
Yes, definitely. So I have a slightly different perspective. I've always been an adopter of new technologies, and I can see huge creative potential of it. So, for example, with the fashion AI community, we have people who have always wanted to create fashion, but they've thought getting the materials, going to university to do it has been friction for them to get into the space. So now with these tools, they can suddenly, become a fashion designer. They can create their own clothes, or they can amuse themselves by creating architecture. So it unleashes a lot of creative potential. And these are tools, so you can use these tools for, profit making, but you can also use these tools for a lot of positive potential. So I agree that we're going to have some people who are in the camp of, yes, let's go for AI. It's the best thing ever. It's a solution to all of our problems. And others who want to limit it or look at all of the negatives, all of the risks. And both are true. That it's not net positive, it's not negative, and we're going to see friction there. It's up to the platforms to then expose what content is created with AI what isn't. Then you as a user can sort of switch on and off. Do you just want pure AI content or not? But eventually 80% of the content will be created through AI. The opportunities here are, if I take a very high level, this is beyond generative AI, but this is AI in general. If you look at humans in general, whether it's the food industry, for example, just the way we live in cities, when it comes to operations, we will go after more standardization to increase profits. So, economies of scale, whether it's huge factory or huge farm or people all living in cities, that's what we have traditionally done. Because as soon as there's complexity, there's too much complexity, it all becomes a big mess and we can't handle it. Whereas computers are very good at complexity. So if you look at Uber, for example, that's a good example. Before, you had a controller saying, okay, someone needs a taxi over here, someone needs that. Okay, we're going to get the pricing. Whereas AI can now, in real time, do the correct smart routing, get the right price for you, and match supply and demand. So what we can get to as a society is, for example, just more decentralization in general, which I am excited about. And I think there's also an opportunity, once we aren't doing some of these tasks, and we may love creating content and blogs and things like that, but I think we can actually move on to more important problems. So once you've got all that data, and say universities, I think, could be the gatekeeper of a lot of true, like, real fact, real research. If universities were to collaborate together, they've got all of this information, they've got a lot of young talent who are idealistic, who want to solve problems like sustainability, corruption, poverty. They then can use generative AI to actually come up with real solutions. And that's what I'm enthusiastic about. But obviously not everyone is going to look at this as a tool to do that. So that's my perspective.
Thank you.
Thanks for that, Frankie. I see, Pernille, you've got your
I'm just saying,
hand.
I want to say that at least for now, I think that most writing, I'm pretty amazed about art generation, the pictures and illustrations. That's really, really amazing. But the writing is really, really bad, and there are too many mistakes in it. And I think that the more people who will use this writing, the more mediocre we will all become. As for now, it might even be better than we are now. And the problem is that everybody will create content. Who will be reading this? That's going to be the big challenge, because I'm reading a hell of a lot, but I have to be more and more selective in my reading. And as we will have all these content creators coming in with AI generated content, who will read it? That's going to be a huge problem. Also, I think for brands, Frankie, because it will just drown in information made in
I agree. I think there's too much noise out there. I really hope there will be some people who rely on this like a crutch, and then they won't develop really basic skills of learning how to read, learning how to write, learning how to memorize. And then you take away the AI, then what are you left with? But you can say the same thing as in terms of our ability to make food from, we used to farm, we used to be able to nourish ourselves. And then you've got supermarkets that fly in blueberries from Peru. And then what happens if there's a supply chain problem? There are many countries that if they were war torn, they would have food problems. So I think it's a real balancing act. We can't rely on these tools in general. And we need to develop some basic skills, but how do we incentivize people? How do we incentivize young people to memorize, to still do exams, if their lessons are now really dull compared to games, social media, that they're getting a dopamine hit from all of these things all the time, and they just can't concentrate, let alone read a book.
That certainly brings a whole lot of different things. As an educationalist, we're constantly looking at how do we change the way in which we engage with students. And I'm old school. I'm unapologetically old school, because I do believe in certain fundamentals in order to get the learning process moving before we engage with technology. But just as you're speaking, Frankie, you know, the last few sentences, I was thinking back to when I was 8, 9, 10, and calculators were the in thing. Literally that, you know, sort of, they were available for everybody in the bookshop, and we were able to use it. And when I was 8 years old, I could go into a supermarket as mum or dad were buying things. I could add up faster in my head than the what they called the adding machine was at the time. Now I'm 100% reliant on a calculator. I can't put two simple numbers together. So it's sort of, you got me thinking about that. But in terms of what Pernille was saying as well, writing on AI is, to use a lovely French word, crap. It really is poor quality. And it's also very obvious. I think maybe because I've read so many student work over the years and academic work over the years, it becomes very obvious what is AI generated writing that comes through and what is something that is creative from a human. You can see the patterns, you can see in the choice of words, and perhaps the over bombastic choice of words sometimes as well comes into that. But I wanted to sort of move on a little bit related to this, because what I find interesting about the writing side, and something that I see very much so here in Southeast Asia, is people, you know, I hate to call them the marketing gurus and the business gurus and all of that, because, you know, we're flooded with them, but encouraging people to make money by writing books using AI and self-publishing and having them out there. And I'm glad you shook your head, because that thing scares me. I'm in the middle of writing a book. It's going to be submitted next month, and it's hard work. You know, there's a lot of me that's gone into it. And people are telling me, why don't you just spend a day asking ChatGPT something, and you can get the same stuff out there, which kind of not only freaks me out, but it actually offends me a little bit. I'm not against AI. I'm not against where the creativity comes from it, but it worries me where we can simply get rich through manipulating the system and not actually doing the work ourselves. And I'm just wondering if either of you want to, or even Farrell in this one too, want to say anything with respect to that.
Well, I can start, because I think that if you want to stick out today, you have to do something better than what we see as mainstream writing in books. And I think it's totally okay to use ChatGPT or generative AI as a research tool. Like if you sit with a really, really complicated topic and you want it explained in a really easy way, why not try and use your ChatGPT to see if they can do it? But you need to know your stuff and know if it's true or not true, and then add on some creativeness. I can't see that creativeness yet in ChatGPT. It might come, I have no idea. A lot of people will say that they will become really, really creative. Let's see. I think that what we have seen now on social media over time is that humans are becoming more and more mediocre, and you have to, it's not that hard to actually stick out. So I'm sure you can stick out with your book if you just
written by a real human.
use AI.
I mean, this comes down to our personal ethics. So, and I mean, the reason why I mentioned what goes on in Southeast Asia is, you know, people are trying to make money off showing others how to use AI to make money in an unethical way. And it still has to come back to us as individuals and saying, you know, my integrity is I will use ChatGPT, for example, to get ideas, to think through, to maybe find newer ways to express something. But at the end of the day, it's got to come down. I've got to do the hard grunt work myself as well, and not use it as a crutch, but use it as an inspiration, perhaps.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the challenge is that as it is, you know, you have, I mean, we get people writing in for internships, etc., to, you know, to even apply for a job. And even, you know, even the writing in the cover letter is subpar. So you imagine if it was to be written by generative AI. So how bad can it be, right? And of course, I think a couple of days ago, Google launched their own write your own email platform, if I'm not wrong, like you know, construct your own email. So we were just joking about how, you know, eventually we're not going to be able to get people writing to us properly, you know, as one does when one is working. You know, if the last couple of days, we've had a couple of students or workers that went viral on social media for their inability to communicate within an organization about how to apply for leave, how to take a time off for a sick family member. And, you know, and I guess if it's not in a way, not to say control, but it's not something that we don't look at this moment, is going to be catastrophic for, I would say, the younger generation, those that fully rely on generative AI to actually to write or to create content, so to speak. But I think we talked about it just now as well in terms of, like, you know, the pros and cons of AI. But I think I'm just going to flip it around. Like, you know, if, for example, we are to utilize it for whatever reasons, how do we build trust to make sure that it's sort of like, you know, how do we build trust through AI so to make sure that it's adopted by our customers or our stakeholders, so to speak? So, you know, maybe let's flip it around. Any one of you want to kickstart the discussion on that? Maybe Francesca, since you're very pro.
So just for the last point on writing books, I've never written a book before, but I did have a lady who came to me who wanted to be a ghostwriter, and the way she does things is she interviews you, she asks questions, and then she turns those transcriptions into prose and adds humor and adds structure and all of those sorts of things. But you can go to ChatGPT now and say, I am a ghostwriter, I am interviewing this person, and I want to ask them questions, and it will then give you all of the questions. So you can basically do that yourself and then answer that, turn how you would naturally express yourself. And I think when you talk, you're most natural. Then turn that to transcriptions and then ask ChatGPT, read this. And you can ask it to read reams and reams and reams of text, and then create the structure of a book. And then it's really up to you, but it does give you a limit in terms of word count. So you would naturally have to, you know, extend that out. So I think a lot of people will be using ChatGPT to use that approach for books, which will be a shame. And it's up to, you know, then the publishing companies, whether it's Amazon, to actually look at the text. Was this produced by AI or not? So as you mentioned, transparency will be probably a key component to this. Was this created with AI or not? What tool? And I think there are platforms like LinkedIn, which is all about your personal profile, the content you create, your network, your community. I think a community in general is a really good way of validating whether this person is trustworthy or not, because to build a community, you have to give a lot. You have to educate people. Look at Kinga, what she's doing with this fantastic community, connecting people. So you have to be pro-social. Whereas there are just talking about people rather than businesses, who you might look at an organization and then suddenly you see lots of almost fake profiles, or they've bought followers, and they've got people who are creating all this AI content on behalf of them, and it's got spelling mistakes. You can, if you do enough due diligence, you will also be able to see who's trustworthy and who's not. So again, we can't be lazy and just ask for the platform to tell us this person is trustworthy, this person isn't, or that company is, or that. We also have to, same thing with the news, we have to really develop that ourselves. What is fake news? What is real news? And that's just going to be a key skill in future.
All right, thank you. Do you want to add on, Pernille or Craig, on this?
If I can just sort of make a comment, again, let me take that slightly academic realm, but I think it applies across the board. For us to develop trust in terms of the content that AI is generating that we're using, we still have to have research skills. We still have to have critical thinking skills, because we've got to triangulate. We've got to go back. We've got to verify facts. We've got to verify citations, sources. I think if you remember, Farrell, last night, Mike was, we did a webinar on publishing last night for early career academics. And our guest speaker, who's a professor from Nottingham University, is talking about how he had, as a journal editor, he had some submission come across his desk, and the submission in itself actually brought together different information that was two parts of two different citations, popped it together and created its own one. And his reviewers had not noticed it, but he went through and thought, you know what, this doesn't feel quite right. And he did the research to go in and to check and to verify. And I think we still need to have those skills. Now, when we bring that into industry, we've still got to make sure that our teams are able to critically think, to look at whatever content we're getting. And that over time is going to build trust, because we've got to build trust not only in the AI itself, but we've got to build trust in our teams that they're doing their due diligence and that they're making sure that they can ensure that content is as accurate as possible.
Thank you. Any
Yeah.
Any other? Go ahead.
Building that trust is, of course, I agree with the community who can kind of verify you and transparency. But I also think in the future we'll have some various declaration models or how do you say it? Like when you buy organic food, you'll have there is an independent organization who will verify that this is organic food. And I think we'll see that with content as well. Like content from publicistic media is produced in this and this and this way. If you say something bad about someone, you'll always ask that person, you'll use more sources, you'll double check all the facts in the piece and stuff like that. So if you're very open about that, and if you also say, well, we have an editor or whatever you want to call that person, and we are responsible for the content. If you don't like that content, you can complain here and here. So that there are various ways of creating trust, I believe.
Right, thank you. So I think we're just going to have like one more question before we open it up to the panel and for them to ask you guys questions. We talked a little bit about AI, pros and cons, growth, etc. But what about what are your thoughts on basically it's on confidentiality? I know we touched about it a little bit, but maybe you want to expand on it in terms of from your perspective, how when it comes to database growth and confidentiality, how AI can be part of the whole mix, so to speak. Francesca?
Sorry, can I just clarify the question?
Sure. So we talked a little bit about AI. We talked a little bit about the about the fact that the pros and cons. But in terms of confidentiality, maybe you want to what are the sort of like how do you see it evolving to a point where, and also taking into account that, you know, that being a integral part of the mix. So, you know, in terms of
okay,
how,
yeah,
how
no,
to
I do understand. You know, banks, for example, they will ban ChatGPT because they don't want people to upload confidential material and get it to be summarized, and so they will ban those tools internally, and maybe they will create their own tools. You know, if you work for Microsoft, you can only use Microsoft tools, and that might then lead them to purchase generative AI companies so that they can incorporate it under their umbrella and they have access to all of the data. So there's that approach. If you are, you know, Microsoft, you'll have the opportunity to do that. And I think that will have to be, you know, part of a contract with any clients, you know, stipulating these are the AI tools that we use internally. This is what, you know, what we will do with your data. We won't use X data with generative AI tools. We might use this data. So I would say just an audit in general would be really, really important for a company to keep track of who is using generative AI tools, for what purposes, for like a reputational and legal standpoint. That will be key for reducing risk. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but I think it's a difficult question to answer.
Yeah, it is. It is. I was finding it really hard to articulate it in the first place. You know, what about Pernille? Do you have anything to add on to the to that?
I mean, most companies now are setting up internal ethics guidelines where staff has to learn not to upload content, and then they can use these tools. But another thing is that some companies are actually using, it's the opposite problem, that if you use ChatGPT as a chatbot on your website for your company, you are in no control of what it is saying. And most companies won't use that. You won't have a chatbot who can tell your customers stuff where you don't know what it's saying, you know. And that's why I'm also a bit shocked that Snapchat can actually incorporate that towards children, you know. You can use it, a local version of it, and embed it and try and control it. But there are lots of other chatbots out there where you are in control of the answers.
Yeah, that makes sense. So thank you for that, Pernille. Kinga, would you like to take over and talk, you know,